What's going on, everyone? The bulls are back in action as the S&P 500 is officially positive on the year and is only 4.5% away from new all-time highs. But believe it or not, 52% of the market actually did close down in the red today, which I thought was very interesting. And there's a lot of money to be made in this market. We have a ton of stuff to cover today. Make sure to stick with us all the way until the end. But Tom, let's not waste any time and let's get right to it.
Yeah, the bull fest continues today. The SPY made a massive run above 585, actually pushed all the way up towards 590 resistance, which is pretty awesome. It got within $1 of that around the end of the day today. So let's go. The overall bull run is continuing, and going over to the heat map, I could not believe that the majority of stocks were down in the red, Mike. That's pretty crazy to say. But as we can see, the better, more influential stocks were definitely green, like Nvidia, Meta, Tesla, and others. And Nvidia actually had a lot of news today. We can see that they were the real leader out of the S&P, up 5.6% with having so much weighting. It was up to $130. And as we go to like the Nvidia daily chart, things are starting to get pretty bullish as it's breaking some key resistances. But there was a Saudi Arabia deal today where they're sending 18,000 of their Blackwell GB300 chips to there for an AI, to build out their AI infrastructure, which is pretty awesome. There's a company called Humane, which obviously is a Saudi company, and the CEO of Nvidia, Jensen Huang, announced this today at a trip that even included Donald Trump and other top CEOs. I know Trump even took a dig at Tim Cook today, which was kind of funny, saying that Jensen was there and Tim Cook was not. But either way, Mike, Nvidia is definitely getting some action off of this deal, and as we know, GPU deals normally get Nvidia pretty bullish in the short term.
Seriously, yeah, up 5.5% on the day is awesome to see. And if we look closer at Nvidia over the past few weeks, it's great to see some positive momentum come back into play with this one, because as we all know, over the past few years, this stock has been one of the most crazy euphoric stocks out there, but it has been slowing down a little bit over like the past few months. But this momentum's great to see. Tom, for tomorrow, are there any key levels that especially stick out, or is there anything else on the charts that we should pay attention to?
Yeah, as it starts to rise here, I did notice that there's a few key levels coming up. I really do like $130 and $131 from like the high of day today. That has to be on watch for tomorrow. It wasn't really able to break above there. And also, like if we go to like an hourly chart and we zoom out quite a bit, we can tell that like 132 is where there's been a lot of bounces on Nvidia in the past. So this is definitely a huge area of resistance. This is going to be a big level to break out above tomorrow. And if we do break that, I could see some next levels coming in around 135, where Nvidia was peaking out on the way down here before it started falling off. But that's mainly what I'm looking for tomorrow. I think that over the next few weeks, the big accomplishment for Nvidia would be getting back up towards 140 to 144, where it peaked out back in February.
Yeah, that would be great, but the momentum is strong, so it's definitely possible. So we shall see. But some other things that people should be aware of heading into tomorrow is that there was some other news today related to this recent White House trip to Saudi Arabia, where basically the White House announced a $600 billion investment from the Saudis into the U.S., and they are expected to potentially get this up to $1 trillion total. Honestly, there weren't that many like ultra-specific details related to this deal just yet, but it is something that we wanted to mention just so everyone could be aware of it. It does seem like there is some good progress being made here as well. So again, we just wanted to mention that. But what I would say was even more important than this today was all of this crazy Coinbase news and price action. This stock soared up into the heavens today as it popped up by just under 25% on big news that they are officially joining the S&P 500.
Yeah, this is awesome. Coinbase joining the S&P 500, and people are probably like, well, who are they replacing? Because as we know, somebody has to be leaving, and they're actually replacing Discover Financial, which is in a deal where they are getting acquired by Capital One. So that's a pretty big deal there. But nonetheless, Coinbase is getting into the S&P, and Coinbase has had a lot of hype over the past couple years. Of course, it's one of the more famous Bitcoin-related stocks out there. As we can see, Mike, since like the beginning of 2024, Coinbase has been very choppy. I mean, it's ran up to new highs, but it's also chopped down quite a bit at the same time, falling like 50% plus in some circumstances. But in the short term here, it's gapping up very well, and it's getting back into a crazy range where whenever Coinbase starts to get in this range, it likes to have a lot of crazy movement. So I'm really glad to see it gapping up here. And as we know, whenever Coinbase can get some momentum going, it can definitely move. And, you know, whenever new companies join the S&P, it definitely is something that generally brings in a lot of price action in the short term. So definitely keep this stock on watch. It is in play right now with a lot of crazy momentum. And even like MicroStrategy was doing pretty well today, maybe just kind of following along with the news.
Yeah, and Bitcoin's still pretty close to its all-time high as well. It's sitting right around like $105,000 per coin, which definitely helps. But I guess looking more specifically at Coinbase, they have a ton of momentum to them, and we could see back when they had their like most recent crazy run up back in November, when they posted these giant green candles, like just like they are now, they certainly did have potential to continue for multiple days at a time. And it wasn't just in November when this happened. If we go back to, let's say, February of 2024, that was like a multi-week uptrend there as well. And quite honestly, the further you zoom back, the more examples there are. So it's definitely a stock to keep close on watch. And like for tomorrow, Tom, what would you say are like the key levels here?
Whenever I'm looking at Coinbase, I've noticed that in the past, they've really peaked out a lot right around this 260 to 265 mark. And we can tell that it's not generally just right on 260 or right on 265. I have seen the majority of these bounces coming very close to 264. So that's going to be the main resistance that I'm watching for. But I would say just give like a $3 to $4 price range right there between like 260 to 264 to 265. That will be very influential here. The big thing with Coinbase, though, is that once we get past there wasn't really too many resistances up until like this $300 resistance. And that's going to be the next major level that I think a lot of traders look for, is that big peak if we can get past 265. So that's what I'm watching for here overall, Mike. Of course, there's always going to be some minor levels mixed in, and there will be intraday resistances that form as well that definitely need to be looked at tomorrow. So watch the intraday price action too, because those intraday resistances can play out pretty well.
No doubt. So it's safe to say there is a lot of bullishness and euphoria right now, but we can't just mention the bull side. We also have to mention some risks to be aware of as well. And we have some interesting data right here showing what happens basically when the S&P 500 has more than 58% of its stocks hit a 20-day high, which is exactly what we're seeing right now. And in the short term, it is very common to see a pullback. We can see we have a lot of negative average returns, and it's pretty rare to see just a continuation over the next few days. So there's a lot of bullishness right now, but don't get too caught up in the hype. Look at the historical data, just like shown on the chart now.
Yeah, 100%. It's pretty crazy to see this much negative price action in the short term following some big pops like that. But I guess, you know, whenever we see so many stocks run up, sometimes there can be those short-term pullbacks. I guess the one cool thing is that once we get to like 4 days later and even 1 week later, things start to get skewed more into the green. And even 2 weeks later, you know, 67%, that's pretty good. But there's definitely still a lot of red mixed in on the 1 and 2 day reading. So just keep that in mind. And I will say there's a lot of bullishness right now in the stock market, Mike, and it does seem like things are getting a little bit overextended following that big gap up from Monday.
Exactly. Like the stock market can't be green every single day, but in a longer term sense, though, returns are looking pretty optimistic. As we can see when we look further out in the historical data, whether you look at 1, 3, 6, or 12 months out, there is a whole lot of positivity that normally comes in situations like we're in now. We could see 1 month later the stock market ends up green 83% of the time, and the average returns are pretty decent as well, and overall looking good.
Yeah, 100%. I love how whenever we start to go further out, it kind of solidifies the idea of this being a good dip buying area. And I do think that a lot of traders right now who have been buying the dip are very happy that they have been, right? Like we can go look at stocks like Nvidia and others that have truly been exploding off of these lows. And, like let's just say that you averaged in and your average price happened to be a little bit above 100. Let's just say it's 105. You're up 23% right now. If you did happen to catch the low, which you'd be pretty lucky to, but nonetheless, you'd be up like 50% already on Nvidia. So there's quite a bit of stocks moving like this as well. Some a little bit less, some a little bit more, of course, but nonetheless, I do like the idea of this being a good area to buy up the dip. And there's a lot of data suggesting that, like, let's just say that the worst part of the market could be over in the short term.
It's definitely an exciting time to be a trader, and we also had some pretty interesting news from Goldman today that basically shows that they are expecting a record $1.35 trillion, yes, trillion with a T, in stock buybacks and authorizations this year. So that's pretty exciting to see. We can see that there's a lot of money set to be flowing into the markets just from like the, you could just say corporation side of things. So very exciting.
Yeah, and I know Goldman is definitely a pretty respected institution and bank, of course, so definitely do not take this too lightly at the end of the day. Mike, whenever we talk about share repurchases and share buybacks, I think it's something that goes a little bit under the radar, and I think it's something that people definitely take for granted. Whenever certain companies like Apple and others report big buybacks on earnings, it can definitely help move the stocks quite a bit. So if they're expecting like let's just say some huge amount of buybacks, that's definitely something that I would see as a fairly bullish and positive sign, at least in the short term.
Definitely. So, like, of course, we have key, like, you could say, like, fundamental type data, like stock buybacks. We have some great, interesting historical stats, like we just covered. But we also are in a very historical situation right now, where if we look at the S&P 500, this recent recovery has truly been a crazy one, to say the least. And we actually have not seen a recovery like this, where the stock market completely erased a 15% year-to-date decline in under 6 weeks since August of 1982. So how about we go to the S&P 500, we go back to August 1982 and see what happened next. That was certainly a crazy time, and of course there are a lot of differences between 1982 and today, but looking back at what the market has done in the past can definitely give some nice insights to see what's to come. So Tom, what are you seeing on the charts?
Looking at it right here, Mike, obviously we saw a huge jump at first in August of 1982, and then, of course, in the subsequent following months into 1983 and even onwards, we saw a massive continuation and recovery. This is an SPX daily chart, and, this is pretty crazy. We saw a huge recovery up August into September, and then, obviously, towards the end of the year, just it continued to move up in a crazy, crazy way. And I think that that's something to look at and to keep in mind right now, whereas a lot of traders might be thinking like, okay, right now the SPY is kind of like ripping to the upside. Aren't we gonna, get a huge pullback or something along those lines again? And the answer is we might not. As we go back, we look at some of this historical data, especially from 1982, it definitely paints a light of like, okay, whenever we have a nice bullish market, there can definitely be those continuations that come in those subsequent months.
No doubt. So I guess looking more specifically at the market for tomorrow, we know there's a lot of bullishness, but what does this mean for tomorrow? What are the key levels and what should we be like practically paying attention to on the charts?
Yeah, looking at SPY from today, Mike, it was awesome, and we got very close to a key resistance at $590. The real challenge with SPY right now is that it's at levels that we haven't seen in quite a long time. We have to go back to the beginning of this year, like in February, to where SPY really peaked out to find a lot of these resistances. I really do like 590 still. I know that the high of day today was right around 589, but 590 has to be on watch. As I'm marking on the chart, this is a very influential level on the SPY, so that has to be on the radar. I do like some resistances past there around 592, so that will definitely be on the radar as well. And then, of course, 595 just past there. Those are going to be some levels that I think are definitely possible to touch tomorrow. If we do rip past that, I do have some resistance around 597.50 just past there before we get towards 600. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at $600 now in the short term on the SPY again. We're pretty much only $11 away from there at the high of day today. So there's definitely a lot of resistances coming up. If we go and we zoom in and look at some key supports, I thought today 584 to 585 was a huge resistance. So that'll end up being a big support for me for tomorrow, along with 580 and 582.
Enjoy the bull trend, but don't get too caught up in the bullishness. Be prepared for a pullback when it inevitably does happen. But looking more specifically at this week's lineup in terms of economic events, Tom, what do we have on the radar?
Yeah, it was pretty awesome this morning. 1 hour before the market opened, we did have some inflation data come out that helped add some fuel to the SPYs. It actually showed that the year-over-year inflation rate was dropping a little bit. The last reading in March was 2.4%, but the April reading came in at 2.3%. And I know a lot of people have been looking for inflation to pop up with all the tariff news and everything like that. Of course, that might be delayed a little bit. And of course, we're getting deals done now. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. But nonetheless, the inflation data came out this morning. Tomorrow, there's not too much on the radar. There are some Fed speeches. As far as Thursday goes, there's PPI data and retail sales. And then Friday, we do have building permits, housing starts, and Michigan consumer sentiment. And then looking at the earnings for tomorrow, we do have Sony and Tencent in pre-market, along with Cisco in after hours.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more of like a slower earnings week, but sometimes that's just how it is. But one stock that is truly going nuts right now that did not report earnings, but is certainly all over the news, is UnitedHealth. Their CEO basically stepped down out of nowhere today, and their company suspended their forecast. This stock is down nearly 18% today. This is insane for a health company as large as this one. And as we know, they've had quite the crazy year, to say the least. After their CEO was murdered recently, they had a huge cyber attack, and the government is investigating them quite a bit. So it has been a disaster for this company.
It definitely has. It's almost like, you know how we talked about Boeing a few months ago, and it was like something bad would happen like every other week. A plane would have a problem, then there'd be some manufacturing problems or something along those lines. It's like the same thing with UNH, just in like the healthcare world. That whole thing with their CEO getting shot definitely makes me question, like, why did this guy step down? He cites personal reasons. I'd be curious to see exactly like what those reasons are, but nonetheless, it's definitely a very negative thing to see, and especially with their guidance as well. I mean, that's terrible to see, whenever a company suspends their annual forecast. Nobody wants to be hearing that, and it obviously created a large gap down. I guess the big thing that I have with UNH is that this is just a very volatile stock in general. Like, as we look at it around, like, let's just say the end of 2024 and then in 2025, we've seen nothing but crazy moves. There was this big drop into the beginning of the year. Then at the beginning of 2025, we actually had a crazy recovery. And then just within the past month, we just had these two massive gap downs, pretty much causing the stock to fall 50%. So it's been a wild time for UNH this year, Mike. And it's pretty nuts, like, when you zoom out, because they were a powerhouse for years until these problems started amounting.
Yeah, and the market is calling BS big time on this company because, like you said, the CEO cited personal reasons for just leaving the company out of nowhere. The market is clearly not believing that one bit. And I think the key opportunity here is that we know the stock is in play. Like, no one knows if this stock is going to go up or down tomorrow, but we do know that its moves are going to be like momentum driven, and it's going to move quite a bit. So, riding the trend and, of course, positioning yourself in a way where you are flexible, where you can just like switch directions as the trend changes, is definitely a smart thing to do here. And I think it's a stock that should definitely be kept close on watch, not only for tomorrow, but honestly over the next like 3 to 4 weeks at least. Like you mentioned, Tom, this stock is swinging quite a bit, and there are some pretty good opportunities associated with it.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say over the next couple days, it's sitting right around $300 support right now. So if you're watching it to the downside, maybe watching for a $300 breakdown would not be the worst way to go, especially considering that the stock fell from $380 down to $310 today. I don't think a $10 move down to 300 would be missing that much of the move there. So maybe waiting for some confirmation under 300 would be the smart way to go in the short term. But whenever you zoom out on that daily, it just gets worse and worse for UNH in the short term. But Mike, I guess it's time to get into some plays for tomorrow. And with my first setup, I'm looking at ticker symbol ACHR, Archer Aviation. They actually reported earnings and they are up 22% today. I love to see it. Ripping to the upside. If they can keep going and rip above $11.60 tomorrow, I'm going to be looking for a nice continuation on this one. Looking at the daily chart, they're actually getting close to some very key resistance, and we're starting to see some stocks test resistance and even break it. So I could see ACHR breaking this over the next few days. Nonetheless, it's in play. There's a lot of momentum following earnings, and it's a growth stock that loves to run.
There we go. Another stock that is definitely close on watch is SMCI. This one crushed it today, and their intraday price action was phenomenal. They had some analysts at Raymond James give them like a price target of $41, which was nice, and an outperform rating. I love the intraday price action, and this stock is definitely on the radar for a potential continuation tomorrow. I was looking for this stock to break above that $40 resistance level, but it's basically already there in after hours, so it's really going to be just like momentum and price action based here. Keep a close eye on this one tomorrow. The more pressure it puts on intraday highs, the better and stronger the price action becomes, as perfectly demonstrated today.
Yeah, that was insane. 16%. And I love the daily chart setup on SMCI too. It's starting to come up off of the base very well in the short term. With my next setup, I'm looking at Palantir to the upside. They were up 8% today, and guess what? Palantir broke out to new all-time highs today. Who could have guessed, right? Even if we go to like the 4-hour chart and we zoom out, it squeaked it out just a little bit. I know a lot of people might be like, Tom, didn't they test the high? But it did break it by just a little bit today. If we could get a good continuation tomorrow up above 131, then I'm going to keep watching Palantir to the upside. I love the way it breaks. Palantir is a stock that whenever it runs, it loves to go on continuations, and it's good to see it breaking this recent high. I'll be honest, I was pretty pessimistic with this one as it kept rejecting off of resistance here, but today, with the breakthrough, I am pretty optimistic in the short term, and if the SPY gets a continuation, that would be something that I love to see. But going over to the Bookmap with Palantir, there is a target overhead that I like above 131, and that is $135. We can see that there's 156,000 shares stacked up around 135. I know yesterday we looked at a lot of different plays, and Nvidia was one of the more popular ones that we actually looked at on the Bookmap, and it was actually amazing to see Nvidia get right up to around that key 130 resistance after breaking 125, and we looked at a lot of those levels on the Bookmap yesterday, so I'll definitely be watching 135 resistance on Palantir.
Sounds great. This has been one of the craziest stocks over the past year, and that 135 level is definitely worth watching very closely. So good stuff there. Another stock that is very close on watch is MU. There was a recent $2.9 million big money trade with this one, and the trader is up over 300% here, which is insane to say. The stock increased by another 5% today, which is awesome, and it's definitely still on the radar just for like a broader move up. Of course, the stock has been crushing it over recent weeks, so it shouldn't be that surprising if there was a little bit of a pullback, but considering that the big money trader here is still holding and they are just crushing it and the market is very euphoric right now, it's definitely a ticker worth keeping on watch. If it can keep up this level of price action, I wouldn't be surprised if the stock can retest at like 104 to 106 area, but either way, keep it close on watch.
That would be awesome to break 100 in the short term and test some of those big resistances. I will definitely be watching it, especially after it had a 5% move today. You can't ever discount these chip stocks in the short term. They are really getting volatile here, and I think that a lot of that China news over the weekend, of course, has been fueling a lot of this rally, but with chip stocks specifically, that really helps out.
No doubt. All right, well, let's jump right into today's momentum plays then. And with the first one, we have First Solar, FSLR to the upside.
FSLR loves volatility. If they're able to break above $200 tomorrow, keep watching them up. That is a huge psychological resistance.
With the next one, we have NewScale, SMR also to the upside.
Yeah, the small modular reactor company, if they can break out above 2250 just at their high of day, then watch them to the upside as well.
And then with the last one, we have Plug Power, PLUG, to the downside.
I'm pretty surprised to see Plug down, but they had some bad earnings. If they break under 81 cents tomorrow, watch them down. We can actually see today that they tried to break under 81 cents like 8 times and failed to break under there. So if we rip under there tomorrow, it could be a good bearish sign.
Sounds great. So keep these 3 stocks on the radar for potential continuations tomorrow, if and only if they break through the levels listed. But besides that, Tom, let's jump right into today's big money trade, and we have a $1.2 million trade with ticker symbol HUM. This is another large U.S. health insurance company, and the trader here bought the 220 strike put options that expire somewhat soon on June 20th of 2025. As we know, there has been some horrible price action and news and momentum with UnitedHealth recently. Humana has also been struggling quite a bit. The stock fell by nearly 10% today, and these put options are a little bit far out of the money, which makes this a high risk, high reward trade. When you have out of the money options like this, it definitely makes it where the options are have a higher chance of expiring out of the money. But if the stock does end up flushing, these options can definitely soar. So definitely keep this trade close on watch, and it'll be very exciting to see how this one does.
Yeah, and the one thing I really do like about this Humana setup, and there are some things that I like and I don't like here, and I'll go over a couple of them, but with Humana, the one thing that I do like is that it's been kind of stuck and chopping in this zone for a long time, and it's finally coming back down for a retest here. And I'll be honest, on a lot of these downward setups, where they chop around like this, we might be seeing a breakdown of that recent low, and that would obviously be best case scenario in this setup here. Of course, the other negative is that, of course, while it is breaking down and testing that recent low, that is a big support down there around 213 to 220. So that is something to keep in mind with this play. But nonetheless, I could see Humana, flushing below this support. It is a pretty risky play in this sense, but there's not a lot of time to this, only about like a month worth of time here. So really not that crazy. And at the end of the day, it's a lot of money, $1.2 million. I think that they're pretty confident in this one. And if they were shorting those puts, and then, let's say Humana flushes down, that would be pretty rough. And I don't think that they'd be wanting to risk that right now.
Yep, so either way, keep a close eye on this one. But before we continue on, we have to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Steve Aroni in the Stocked Up trading floor, who had a great post today and some awesome profits with some Palantir call options. So huge shout out to you, Steve Aroni. Keep up the great work, and it was awesome to see over $1,000 in gains on this trade today, and it was a profit fest in the profits channel today. So shout out to everyone who crushed it. It was awesome to see posts like we saw today, and if you are into short-term trading, definitely check out that first link in the description in the comments down below. Our search bot hit it out of the park today. There were so many crazy trades. We could see we had some SMCI calls pop up by 540%, UNH puts by 356%, Coinbase calls 340%, Palantir calls 283%, and the list goes on and on. And I'm not going to get into too many specifics, but we have some very exciting things coming to the trading floor very soon. So we still do have coupon code Big Money active for the yearly plan. Now is it's definitely a great time to get in. So definitely check out that link in the description in the comments down below. Either way, there's a lot of exciting price action in the market right now. It's a great time to be a trader. If you're new to the channel, definitely consider obliterating that subscribe button to get our videos recommended to you more often. But besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.